Hello, today is October 13th, and we are reading through our lectionary selection for the 21st week after Pentecost. We are reading today our second reading for the week from the book of Hebrews, chapter 5, verses 1 through 10. Every high priest chosen from among mortals is put in charge of things pertaining to God on their behalf, to offer gifts and sacrifices for sins. He is able to deal gently with the ignorant and wayward, since he himself is subject to weakness. And because of this, he must offer sacrifice for his own sins as well as for those of the people. And one does not presume to take this honor, but takes it only when called by God, just as Aaron was. So also Christ did not glorify himself in becoming a high priest, but was appointed by the one who said to him, "You are my son, today I have begotten you." As he says also in another place, "You are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek." In the days of his flesh, Jesus offered up prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to the one who was able to save him from death, and he was heard because of his reverent submission. Although he was a son, he learned obedience through what he suffered, and having been made perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation for all who obey him, having been designated by God a high priest, according to the order of Melchizedek. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So, as most of you are probably aware who are listening to these devotions, I was ordained this past Saturday as a pastor and called and installed here at Grace Lutheran as the pastor here. And as I was reading the Hebrews passage this morning, I was struck by the job description of a high priest, and what this job is. Not to say that I am a high priest, but this is in some ways a job that is not necessarily it isn't a job that you can jump into right away. I'll say that. It's not a profession you can immediately adopt for yourself or begin to call yourself a pastor just because you fancy yourself one. Some do. But if you want to be connected to the church at large, if you want to be in relationship with the assemblies of God, no matter what denominational form that is, there's typically a lot of work to find yourself a position, and we finding a job as a pastor is given the title of call. It's considered a call, a vocation, something that God is calling you to, or you feel very strongly about. And I'll say the number of steps that one has to go through, going through committees and reviews by your synod, and fulfilling the educational requirements they ask of you before you can become a pastor. There's a lot that goes into the call process of being accepted as a pastor in the ELCA, which is my experience, of course. But for this description of the high priest that this author of Hebrews is describing of Jesus, he is saying that Jesus fulfills the description of a different kind of high priest. For every high priest chosen from among mortals is put in charge of things pertaining to God on their behalf, to offer gifts and sacrifices for sins. This is the description of a religious leader. This is someone who I was a pastor, chosen from among mortals. And when it says offer gifts and sacrifices, we might be led in the Christian tradition to think of the meal or the remembrance of the sacrifice of Jesus. And the prayers that we offer to God. And it's a reminder, this passage in Hebrews, is that pastors who are chosen from among mortals are meant to deal gently with the ignorant and wayward. That's a good reminder to pastors. Deal gently with those who are wayward or might not know as much as others, and to acknowledge their own weakness. We are simply human people who are called to a difficult job at times, and we have to pray on account of our own sins as well as on account of our congregations. And so we don't take on this honor, but we feel called to it. And so in that sense, we are like the sons of Aaron. This Hebrews, the sons of Aaron are the Levitical class, the priestly class among ancient Israel. So in some sense, we are like that group chosen from among mortals. But Jesus was appointed in a different way, this passage is saying, and he's appointed directly by the Spirit. He was begotten by God, but he was appointed by the Spirit as a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. And so you will hear this name in Hebrews, particularly, and in only a couple of other places, notably in Psalm 110 and then in Genesis. Melchizedek is a priest who worships Yahweh, it seems, who seems to have been a high priest of Yahweh before Abraham. And so it's Melchizedek who blesses Abraham. So we think of Abraham as the founder of the new worship of Yahweh. He's the founder of Israel, the famous ancestor of Israel, who has a particular relationship with God. But Melchizedek is already worshiping God when Abraham meets him, and Melchizedek gives him a blessing. Melchizedek is the king of Salem and a high priest. So he's a mysterious figure in some sense. He only appears in one chapter in Genesis to bless Abraham, and he appears in Psalm 110 in reference. That is a psalm that references this episode in Abraham's life. And then he is referenced here. And the author of Hebrews is making a rhetorical comparison. He is saying that Jesus is in the order of Melchizedek. That is, he is a high priest who is appointed, who is the priest appointed directly by God. That Melchizedek, in some sense, was this unusual case of someone who was an utterly righteous example, and that Jesus fulfills the order of Melchizedek. He sets himself up as the high priest forever. He is both the priest and the sacrifice. He is the priest and the lamb, and he stands high above any human that is chosen to lead as pastor or as priest. And so the author of Hebrews is saying Jesus fulfills the law. And in fact, he over-fulfills the law, because he is in the order not of Aaron, not of the priests of Israel, not of Abraham, but of Melchizedek. He is an entirely other kind of high priest that fulfills the law of Israel and fulfills the salvation of the world outside of Israel. This is a huge statement, and because we have the witness of Jesus' life, that we have the witness of him having been made perfect, he doesn't have sins of his own to submit to God. This is a huge claim about who Jesus is and what Jesus does for us. So, as we read further into the book of Hebrews, this name might pop up. Melchizedek might pop up again, and the author will more fully flesh out what he means by comparing Jesus to this mysterious figure of Melchizedek. All right, I hope you're having a great week. Bye-bye.